Somewhere in Japan right now, a woman is standing in a crowded train, her arm aching from holding a heavy bag, running 20 minutes late for an appointment she cannot reschedule. And she says nothing, not a sigh, not a word to the stranger beside her, not even a flicker of frustration on her face. If this happened almost anywhere else in the world, you'd expect at least a groan, a muttered complaint, maybe a comment to a friend later that day. But in Japan, this kind of quiet endurance isn't rare. It's the norm. So the question is simple, but the answer is not. Why do Japanese people rarely complain about their lives, even when life gives them plenty to complain about? The answer isn't repression. It isn't simply politeness. It's something deeper, a way of relating to hardship that most of the world has forgotten how to practice. And by the end of this video, you may find yourself questioning how much of your own daily frustration is actually necessary at all. Let's start with something important. This isn't a video about suppressing emotions. Japanese people feel frustration, disappointment, and stress, just like anyone else. Anyone who tells you otherwise is romanticizing a culture, not understanding it. What's different isn't the presence of hardship, it's the relationship to it. To understand this, we have to go back to a phrase you've probably never heard, but one that quietly shapes how millions of people in Japan move through their day. Shikata ga nai. It roughly translates to, "It cannot be helped." On the surface, it sounds like resignation, like giving up, but that's a misunderstanding. Shikata ga nai isn't about giving up on life. It's about giving up the fight against things you cannot change, so that you have energy left for the things you can. Think about how much of daily complaining is actually directed at things completely outside our control. The weather, traffic, a delayed train, a rude stranger, a long line at the store. We complain not because complaining fixes these things, but because complaining feels like doing something. It gives the illusion of control in moments where we have none. Shikata ga nai interrupts that illusion. It asks a simple, almost uncomfortable question. Is this actually within my power to change? If the answer is no, then venting about it doesn't restore control. It just drains energy that could be spent elsewhere. This is where the psychology becomes interesting. Western psychology has a name for a very similar concept, the locus of control. People with a strong internal locus of control believe their actions shape outcomes. People with a strong external locus of control believe outcomes are shaped by circumstances beyond them. Neither is correct in isolation, but what researchers have found again and again is that the healthiest people are the ones who can accurately tell the difference. They fight hard for what they can influence, and they release, without bitterness, what they cannot. Shikata ga nai is essentially a cultural training system for exactly that skill. It teaches emotional discernment, sorting your frustrations into two piles, worth fighting and not worth fighting. And it does this so early and so consistently in Japanese life that it becomes almost automatic by adulthood. But here's where it gets even more interesting, because this mindset doesn't exist in isolation. It's reinforced by a second, quieter cultural value, omoyari. Omoyari is often translated as empathy or consideration for others, but that translation doesn't fully capture it. Omoyari is the practice of imagining how your emotional expression affects the people around you before you express it. It's not suppression for suppression's sake. It's suppression, sometimes, out of care. That woman on the train, holding her aching arm, running late, saying nothing? Part of her silence comes from shikata ga nai. This cannot be helped, so why waste energy resisting it? But part of it also comes from omoyari. She understands that a sigh, a complaint, an irritated glance doesn't just express her own feelings. It transfers her stress onto everyone around her. In a country where so much of daily life happens in shared, crowded spaces, trains, offices, elevators, sidewalks, this awareness becomes almost a form of social hygiene. Keeping your frustration to yourself isn't just personal restraint. It's a form of respect for the emotional environment you share with strangers. This might sound exhausting to some viewers, and it's worth acknowledging honestly. This cultural norm has real costs. Japan has documented, well-researched struggles with workplace stress, with the pressure to appear composed even when someone is struggling internally. With a reluctance to seek help, because asking for help can feel like a burden placed on someone else. This isn't a fairy tale. Emotional restraint, taken to an extreme, can become emotional isolation. We're not here to pretend otherwise. But there is a version of this mindset, a moderate, intentional version, that offers something genuinely valuable to anyone willing to learn from it. And that's what we're really exploring here. Not blind suppression, but selective release. Not never feel frustration, but don't let frustration leak into every corner of your life and every person around you. Let's bring this back to something practical, because understanding a philosophy is only useful if it changes how you actually live. Consider your own week. How many times did you complain, out loud or in your head, about something you had zero power to change? The traffic, the weather, a flight delay, someone else's mood? Now consider how much of that energy, redirected, could have gone toward something you actually could influence. A project you've been avoiding, a conversation you've been putting off, a boundary you've needed to set. This is the real, applicable lesson behind Japanese emotional restraint. It's not about becoming silent. It's about becoming selective. Before your next complaint leaves your mouth, or even forms fully in your mind, ask one question. Is this something I can change? If yes, that energy deserves to become action, not commentary. If no, shikata ga nai. Let it go and reserve your emotional energy for what actually matters. There's another layer to this worth exploring, and it involves a Japanese concept you may already be familiar with: Kaizen, the philosophy of continuous, incremental improvement. Kaizen is often discussed in business contexts, Toyota's manufacturing systems, for example, but its roots run much deeper into everyday Japanese life. And it connects directly to why complaining is so rare. Kaizen teaches that improvement doesn't come from dramatic outbursts of frustration followed by dramatic attempts at change. It comes from small, consistent adjustments made quietly over time. If something in daily life is genuinely frustrating, a system, a task, a habit, the Kaizen response isn't to complain about it. It's to slightly adjust it, improve it by 1%, then again, tomorrow. This reframes frustration entirely. Instead of frustration becoming a feeling you express, it becomes information you use. Something isn't working well? That's not a reason to vent. It's a signal to adjust. This subtle shift from expression to adjustment is part of why complaining feels almost unnecessary in a mindset shaped by Kaizen. The energy that would go into complaining goes into improving instead. Now let's talk about something psychologically fascinating: the difference between venting and rumination. Many people believe that complaining, or venting, is emotionally healthy, a necessary release valve. And in small doses, expressing frustration to a trusted person can indeed help process difficult emotions. But research in psychology has increasingly shown something uncomfortable. Habitual venting doesn't reduce negative emotion, it often reinforces it. When you repeatedly verbalize frustration, especially about things outside your control, you're not releasing the emotion, you're rehearsing it. Neurologically, you're strengthening the exact neural pathway associated with that frustration, making it easier, not harder, for your brain to default to that emotional state in the future. This is sometimes called co-rumination, when it happens between two people who repeatedly complain to each other. And studies have linked it not to emotional relief, but to increased anxiety and depressive symptoms over time. This is precisely what shikata ga nai protects against, often without the people practicing it even knowing the psychological mechanism behind it. By choosing not to verbally rehearse frustration over things they cannot change, many Japanese people are, in effect, avoiding a well-documented psychological trap. Let's shift now to something more tender, more human, because none of this is really about discipline for its own sake. It's about protecting your inner peace so you have something left to give the people and pursuits you actually care about. Picture a Japanese mother raising 2 children in a small Tokyo apartment. Space is limited, money is tight, the days are long. By almost any measure, she has plenty to complain about, but if you spent a week in her home, you likely wouldn't hear it. Not because her life is easy, not because she has learned, through shikata ga nai, through omoyari, through Kaizen, to direct her limited emotional energy toward what she can control. How present she is with her children, how calm the home feels, how each small day is lived. This is the quiet, radical idea underneath everything we've discussed. Emotional energy is not infinite. Every complaint you speak, every moment you spend resisting something unchangeable is energy withdrawn from somewhere else. Your relationships, your work, your peace. Your ability to actually enjoy the good moments hidden inside difficult days. Japanese culture, at its best, is not about pretending life is easy. It's about protecting the emotional budget you have so you can spend it on what actually deserves it. There's one more concept worth introducing before we close, because it ties everything together beautifully. Wabi-sabi, the acceptance and even appreciation of imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. Life by nature will always include delays, disappointments, aches, and inconveniences. Wabi-sabi doesn't ask you to eliminate these things. It asks you to stop treating them as flaws in an otherwise perfect life you're entitled to. Imperfection isn't the exception to a good life. It's the texture of one. When you stop expecting life to be smooth, uninterrupted, and convenient, the small frictions of daily existence lose their power to provoke constant commentary. The late train, the rude comment, the long day. These stop feeling like violations of how things should be and start feeling like simply how things are. And in that shift, complaining quietly loses its purpose. So, why do Japanese people rarely complain about their lives? Not because their lives are easier, not because they feel less, but because, layer by layer, through shikata ganai, omoyari, kaizen, and wabi-sabi, many have learned to ask a quiet, disciplined question before frustration turns into words. Is this worth my energy? And when the answer is no, they let it go. Not with defeat, but with a kind of grace most of the world has forgotten how to practice. Maybe the goal was never feel frustrated. Maybe the goal is simply to stop handing your energy to things that were never going to change, so there's more of you left for the things that will